want to welcome you to the 9th in the series of the LRN webinar series. Today's topic, phishing attacks are evolving. Is your workforce ready? And I'm really excited today to introduce our guest speakers. So I'll start with Andy Keller. I'm delighted to introduce Andy, who's the Vice President of Information Security at FiscalNote. FiscalNote is a DC-based SaaS company helping clients make sense of the ever-changing world of policy. They bring together cutting-edge AI and decades of trusted expertise to simplify how organizations track and influence legislation and regulation. In addition to their offices in Washington, D.C., FiscalNote also maintains offices in London and Brussels, serving a global audience. Welcome, Andy. We're delighted to have you.
Thank you, Lenny.
Also joining us today, my second guest is a trusted coworker of mine here at LRN, Parajat Johari. At LRN, Parajat has served as the Chief Product and Technology Officer for the last 4 years. And in that capacity, he oversees the development of cutting-edge solutions to help clients stay on the forefront of emerging threats that include cybersecurity, amongst others. So, Parajat, welcome.
Nice to be here, Lenny.
And for those of you unfamiliar with LRN, LRN is the world's largest dedicated ethics and compliance company, educating more than 30 million learners worldwide each year and helping them navigate complex legal and regulatory environments and fostering strong ethical cultures. LRN is the trusted partner for more than 2,700 organizations worldwide, with offices in New York, London, Mumbai, Singapore, and Tokyo. I'm Lenny Izzo, the Chief Revenue Officer at LRN, and today I will be serving as your moderator, and we've got some great stuff to cover. Before we do, let me just provide a quick legal disclaimer, and then we'll talk about today's agenda. So I'd like to note that today's session will be available on demand following our webinar. Our team will be sending a follow-up email that includes the session recording for you and any of your colleagues to revisit after today's conclusion. Additionally, if we don't have time to get to all the questions raised during the Q&A, our team will be sure to follow up afterwards. So we're looking forward to an insightful and engaging session today, so let's dive in. We put an agenda together today that includes a quick chat about understanding today's evolving threat landscape, building resilience, what leading organizations are doing in order to ensure that they and their workforces are ready for those threats, closing the gap, how to go from just making your organizations aware to actually taking thoughtful actions to mitigate that risk. And we will spend a few minutes introducing LRN's Catalyst phishing simulation product. We'll save a few minutes at the end for Q&A and try to get to everybody's questions. So with that, let's jump in. I always like to start with some numbers. So Andy and Parajat, here, let me share some quick numbers and get your reactions. So, what we see is 94% of data privacy and security breaches start with phishing. 85% of organizations experience at least one successful attack yearly. 18% is the success rate once phishing emails reach employees. And I got to tell you, having spent time in the marketing and sales world, 18% click-through rate is not a bad click-through rate. I know a lot of marketers that would love to have that kind of click-through rate. And I think that is something we'll get into as we talk about the growing sophistication of these threat actors. This one is staggering to me. $4.9 million is cited as the average cost of a phishing breach. And those those don't even include the soft costs and things like the damage to brand. And then last but not least, 1 in 3 employees click on simulated phishing links. And so it just kind of reminds you of how important it is to create that spirit of vigilance within our organizations to ensure that our data is secure and our clients' data is secure. But real quick, Andy, any quick reactions to these numbers?
Yeah, it tells me 1 in 3, about 33% on the last one there, and then 18% for real phishing emails. So the simulations are very convincing, which is good. That's what we want. We want to have those be very, very valuable when we send them out and be very effective. So that's good. And then the 94% of breaches starting with phishing is completely unsurprising. We've gotten as security folks and platform teams and IT teams have, in the past, I would say like 10 to 15, 20 years, become way more aware of the technical security threats that are out there, like unpatched systems, things that are, addressable on the public internet that shouldn't be, all those kinds of like blocking and tackling things. The natural pivot has been to go after the softer targets, which are, of course, mostly are humans. And so it's typically the easiest way to get in. It requires the least technical acumen. It can be, and as we'll talk later, it can be automated at scale a lot better than going after a misconfigured firewall and things like that.
Great points. Looking forward to diving in. Parajat, how about from your perspective, when you see these numbers, what's your reaction?
Yeah, again, echoing what Andy said, not a surprise. And like you said, the 18% success rate, that would be like any marketer's dream come true. And I think what that tells you is that, this is no more your, dead uncle, right, who has left you a fortune, send me your bank information, right? That all that is things of past, right? I think the attacks are very sophisticated, very targeted. They understand your organization, they understand your interests. A lot of these things start. So while the phishing is sort of the end result of it, the threat actors are starting, with a deep knowledge and deep research before they get to it. Just like a smart marketer would, right? And these messages are nicely branded, and sometimes they're perfect, right? And it's very hard for people to look at the email itself. And so, having a very skeptical mind is key here. But again, it's a real combination of, technical controls that we put in place, but then making sure, the people we work with have that skeptical mindset. And as we'll talk about, in this call, that, they can be the weakest link, but they can also be the strongest link.
They can. Well, that's a great segue into our next topic. So let's spend a minute understanding the threat landscape and what we're up against here as we're trying to protect our organizations from these phishing attacks. They have become, as you guys have highlighted, they're very personalized, they're persistent, they're AI driven. Remote and hybrid work have widened the attack surface, and threat actors are using behavioral data to personalize these lures, and we've seen some very convincing templates and campaigns emerge. And again, just a reminder that phishing is the #1 entry point for cyber attacks. I'm going to share some information with you guys. I'm going to ask you to respond. So let's talk about these emerging threat actors. They have started to take the shape of large multinational organizations. They have identities, they have brands, they have different operating profiles. According to the Department of Justice last year, when they took down one of these threat actors, Lockbit, it was estimated that they had successfully extorted $130 million in ransom via their quote unquote ransomware as a service business model. And their list of corporate victims was over 2,000 strong. Other sources cite organizations like Hive and Hunters International as Eastern European-based conglomerates that are similar in size, tactics, and impact. So, let me pause there and just get your thoughts and reactions on, the sophistication of these threat actors that we're up against. Andy, start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we're seeing more and more of is, like you mentioned, Lenny, some of them are still secretive, but other these, active persistent threat groups are just they've glommed onto the building their brand type thing, almost like cyber criminal influencers to some extent. It's really kind of uncanny. But yeah, they just completely commoditized, doing these kinds of things. They run these as ransomware as a service or phishing as a service tools. You pay a little money, sometimes not very much, and they'll run basically a campaign for you, kind of like we'll talk later with phishing simulation campaigns. Makes it very easy for somebody with zero technical acumen that is just, very passionate or very irritated to kick one of these off. And the availability of AI for these groups has just made them even more efficient, with carefully crafted targeted campaigns and things like that. It's just way more accessible. They just have become much more effective, which is scary because they were already pretty effective, a few years ago. And now it seems like these groups are everywhere. If you keep an eye on the security news, it feels like you're reading a new name for these groups almost every day in the news.
Indeed. Parajat, anything to add?
No, I mean, I think for folks, who are, not so much seeped into ransomware as a service, I mean, this is really like an end-to-end product offering, right? So it starts with a toolkit of here are the different ways that you can get into a system, right? So, and guess what? Phishing is definitely one of them. Attachments, malware, credential harvesting, right? So again, all the things we're going to talk about from a simulation perspective, that's the front end, right? And then once these threat actors, right, once they get into your system, right, through credential harvesting, right, they run a scan, right? So they will see what's in the ecosystem, right, and then they will attach themselves to the most valuable data that you might have, right? So PII, credit card information, essentially things that either will be financially damaging or brand damaging for you. And then they will, evade your sort of, your detection systems. They will take that data and they will exfiltrate into a place. So they will take the data and exfiltrate it, and then they will lock the data. So this is kind of like, all of this, you buy the ransomware as a service, and it does that for you. And what that means is, like Andy was saying, anyone who has malintention or is annoyed can execute this whole thing end to end. They don't have to put this thing together. They have it. And then, of course, you'll get the note or something that comes out of it. So I think it's really, it's not just sophisticated, it's that, anybody can, can execute this whole attack for you. So again, the best place to stop them is upfront, right? If you can stop them from getting into your system, because once they're in, they will move laterally through your system and find, the right place where they will get that. So again, a lot of technical controls come into place after they're in, but if you can stop them, that's your best point of defense.
Absolutely.
Great points. So yeah, just driving this point home, like my kids love the movie Despicable Me, and it occurs to me like we're not dealing with Gru and his minions anymore, right? These are wildly sophisticated multinational criminal syndicates. They know what they're doing. They've leveraged industry best practices. They look and feel and sound like great marketers, and they know where those weak points are, as you guys have pointed out. So, we just highlight a few trends here, right? So AI-driven phishing is on the rise. These are highly targeted campaigns. They're multi-channel. I want to talk to you guys and get your reactions on the supply chain aspect, because I think we've seen in some recent headlines that it's often not an employee that is, the source of the vulnerability, but rather members of the supply chain, and so let's use that as just a quick pivot of discussion points. Have you seen that in your own experience and organizations, and what might you tell our audience on how they can be thinking about vulnerabilities through their own supply chains? Andy, I'll tee that first one up to you.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's absolutely been one of the uh any of the more notable or more bombastic security incidents from the past few years have been, what I think I kind of casually call like fourth party risk, right? I am trusting a SaaS provider. I've reviewed their SOC 2 reports. I know they take security very seriously, but they happen to be utilizing another partner, another tool, or they're just utilizing open source software packages to build products like we all do. And it can be a lot of times easier to compromise those things, those types of services. They might be smaller, they might, just not be as a mature in their security practices, but they have, basically some kind of network or authors or authentication trust to that product. I know with the sales loft drift stuff, they were abusing, overly permissive OAuth grants and that were like in place permanently. So that's a big way, that they try to get in. And luckily, we haven't seen a whole lot of that with our third parties. But like I said, it's just luck. It's just, it's pretty much random chance. It's something we all have to be, very concerned about.
Yeah, that's great. Parajat, I know you've had some experience, on the supply side as well. Any thoughts
Yeah.
to add?
Yes, yeah. I mean, yeah, we had similar kinds of situations where one of our suppliers, got impacted, and send us an email asking us to change our
Mhm.
bank information, right? And then following it up with, hey, here's a different account or bank information, and here is where you should direct your payments, right, in future. And of course, it was a legitimate email, right? So all of the security gateways, spam filters, right, like just said, yep, let's send it through, came in, and thankfully our team was vigilant, and knew when the last payments were done, and was surprised to say, hey, why are we getting, an off cycle thing, and alerted us. And then when we reached out, we found out, that that supplier had been compromised, and was essentially, it was coming from some kind of compromised account. So, again, technical controls work really well, but I think the reason we are talking about this today is that, there are scenarios where even with the best technical controls, you might have, third or fourth party systems that might be compromised. And, it looked like a legitimate email because it is, right? There's nothing wrong with
Mhm.
it, except somebody has to pause, think, and say, should I take this action or not? And I think that's a lot of what we try to do, through our behavior change campaigns and simulations.
Yeah, we have how could I have skipped over this? We see that all the time. Maybe not necessarily supply chain, but a customer of ours who we have email contact history with, right? When you're talking about those technical controls, one of the things they look at is like how much traffic has gone back and forth between these, and it will, okay, cool, green light there. We're gonna let this email in, even though it's a fake DocuSign invoice or something, because we have, customers that are suffering account takeovers quite frequently.
Yes.
So I think you guys are kind of touching on this, but I want to ask you the third question on the page here. So like, are there particular types of employees or departments that, we find are more vulnerable than others?
Yeah, from my perspective, absolutely. I typically think of it, we typically see it, them being targeted more, and it makes sense. Customer facing roles, um, roles that are responsible for paying invoices. And then one of the big things we've seen, especially in like, newsworthy incidents, is customer support, right? A lot of times that's outsourced, that's third parties. It happened to Okta not too long ago. where they basically had a phishing social engineering situation with somebody in customer support. That person had, additional authorized access to customer tenants. And they were able to basically just get in and exfil a bunch of data and stuff like that. So, the way I like to think about it is like any role or department where their primary focus is like to fulfill requests, right? They want to be helpful. They want to get you an answer. They want to do something on your behalf, and
They're on the clock, right?
yeah,
So they have a
absolutely.
quick turnaround. They
Yes.
don't.
Yeah. They want or need to move quickly. It's totally understandable. And so, the threat actors out there have started to have pivoted heavily toward those kinds of roles because they know they can make stuff happen by exploiting those folks.
All right. Well, great points. Well, look, this is a good moment to pause and ask our audience a poll question. So the first poll question that we have here today is, how confident are you that your organization's employees can identify a phishing attempt? So we'll give the audience a second to answer this, and then we'll take a look. We've got a couple more poll questions to drop in here over today's webinar. All right, look at that. Somewhat confident. All right, we're not confident. So, I mean, I guess, this is it's an interesting reflection. It's good to know that our audience today is they seem to be aware and working on some defense mechanisms, but a little scary that 21% of our audience is not confident at all. I think that's why we're here, right? So let's keep going. Perhaps by
Yeah,
the end of the day we can drive those numbers higher.
just a quick comment there. The majority of folks thought they were somewhat confident. I think that's the same kind of reaction you get asking your employees directly. Like people, they think they're on top of it. They think they're able to spot these things. But as we saw those statistics earlier, that's not totally true just yet.
Yeah, indeed. Well, listen, you two gentlemen run some great programs. Let's talk about what we've seen leading organizations doing, and then I'm going to ask you which components of this you've been able to capture in the programs that you guys are running in your organizations, and which ones are on the roadmap. So we'll start with moving from awareness to continuous learning. So I think, we see leading organizations not treat this as like a once a year training and then, one and done. They prioritize employee empowerment over punishment. So, somebody's going to click on that phishing simulation email. What happens, and how can we turn that into a learning opportunity? Embedding phishing readiness into culture, not just it's not just an IT initiative, right? It's got your sales organization, your client service organization, your finance teams need to be vigilant and need to be capturing this as part of their day-to-day working culture. Choosing tools that simplify simulation delivery, especially for lean teams, right? We all hope that we've got the resources, but reality is sometimes the right vendor or partner can help us scale and build some defenses there where we may not have all those resources in-house. And then this fifth one, using behavioral insights to tailor training is really helpful. And I think we've seen with the leading programs, they're doing things like adaptive learning. They understand the roles of the individuals that are taking the training. They understand the knowledge that those individuals bring. There's opportunities to test down, test out, streamline the training so it doesn't become repetitive or burdensome. And then number 6 is aligning compliance, security, and the HR teams. And what we see here is a lot of organizations that aren't quite where they want to be. They're running this training program out of one department. A different department has a different learning platform and a different suite of compliance courses. And then there's the the other, the other departments. So you got HR, you got learning and development, you got IT, and you got legal and compliance, and everybody's fighting for mind share with the employees. So how do you build a holistic program that is meeting the needs of everybody without killing the workforce with the workload? And that requires a coordinated approach, right? And that's what we see the leading organizations doing. Yeah, let me open it up. Andy, at Fiscal Note, have you been able to leverage some of these best practices?
Yeah, I'm particularly drawn to number two, prioritizing employee empowerment over punishment. I think it's getting better, but security and IT have long had a reputation of, preferring to like browbeat people into compliance, rather than being a little more empathetic and yeah, empowering them. I don't want our employees feeling like they're getting in trouble for clicking on a phishing simulation. It's an opportunity to, it's a great opportunity actually to immediately retrain and have a very timely impact on their awareness around phishing emails. So that's a really big thing. I don't think the annual training is necessarily what's saving us from people clicking on things they shouldn't. It's a great reminder and a reinforcer, but we want to make employees feel good when they've spotted things and feel less bad when they've fallen for something and just learn and move on. And then, number four, tools that simplify simulation delivery. I've used tools like this in the past, back when they were nascent and novel, and took a lot of effort and time and energy to set these things up in any effective way. And so, I think a lot of people in my position are looking at tools and evaluating them from, will this be a force multiplier, or will this require a lot of my attention and time, and I have got to debug it and stuff like that. So, yes, simulating this kind of thing for lean teams is a huge thing. And then aligning compliance, security, and HR teams. We're always fighting fatigue, right? Hey, we need you to look at this. We need you to look at that. This is due. That's due. And security training doesn't always make the cut for something that gets that priority. So, I think we have to be much more aligned and do our part as practitioners to make sure that the organization understands that, our employee resilience against phishing is, at this point, probably our number one defense from these account takeovers and further breaches happening.
Indeed. Parajat, how about you? Any of these six leading practices resonate significantly with you?
Yeah, I mean, all of them do, but maybe talking about again, number two, right? Employee empowerment over punishment. So yeah, I think our whole program is set up to first train our employees to make sure they understand, what the best practices are, and then run simulations and some of the other things that we do. So again, the focus here is that people understand what's the current threat landscape, what's new, and then we run the simulations. And then even when we run the simulations, we have like more of a sort of an escalated approach. So the first time you might see something, or you might click a link, you might get a do's and don'ts. The next time a micro learning, and then we sort of escalated up to like a full training. So again, we are not trying to punish people, but we're trying to make sure that people understand this, take it, have a learning experience, and then move on to the daily jobs.
That's great. You guys really bring those best practices to life. And so that brings us to our second poll question. What is the biggest barrier to improving phishing resilience in your organization? Is it competing priorities, limited visibility into behavioral data, difficulty maintaining engagement, training fatigue? Andy, you talked about this. I mean, there's just so many courses that employees are being asked to do. We'll give our audience a second to answer those questions. And then, I know where my head's at here, but I'd be interested to hear from the audience. And here we go. Now that is interesting. pretty much a little of all of that, right? So there are so many competing priorities, limited visibility into behavioral data. We get that. Difficulty maintaining engagement and training fatigue. It's all there. Like that's what we're up against, right? And that's why this has been hard to really launch these resilient programs. All right, well, let's keep rolling here. So, look, when we look at those resilient programs, the most effective programs out there, this is what they're doing differently. 74% of top performing organizations train quarterly or more frequently, right? So getting away from that once a year, launch a campaign, keep it open for 30 days and shut it down. It's got to become a lot more part of the daily, weekly, and quarterly routine. 68% are using behavioral analytics to refine campaigns. And that, I think that's really helpful because you see a lot of programs, they talk about course completions. All right, we're at 100% course completions, but they never go any deeper. They don't know if their campaigns are effective, and there's so much more data and analytics that we can leverage. They get a 2 to 3x higher engagement rate when training is context-based and conversational. And then they get a 40% reduction in click rates with integrated ethics and compliance and InfoSec programs, which is great, right? Can we just collaborate better? The payout is huge, right? So, all right. So again, we're on this topic of behavior, not just awareness, but effective learning happens when the employees make mistakes in a safe environment. You guys brought this up. Clicking isn't a failure; it's a teachable moment. And this idea that we can use micro learnings, shorter, more frequent lessons and information bits that get shared out instead of that one time once a year campaign, I think is what really happens. And these, I want to get your take on these supporting bullets here, because to change behavior, we see 4 or 5 things really make a difference, right? So tone from the top, that's a theme that we've heard for many years on effective ethics and compliance programs. So I'm going to ask you guys, like, how can you incorporate tone from the top in data privacy, phishing training, and phishing simulation? And then how can we see better integration of phishing with broader communications around compliance? So we'll pause there. Let me ask you guys, and then there's one more critical question here about peer reinforcement and manager-led discussions. I'm just curious if you've seen some of this be rolled out effectively and the difference it can make.
Yeah, for tone from the top, I think it's on us, especially as security and technology practitioners. Not every organization is going to be focused on security as part of their day-to-day operations. And you have to, you've got to kind of get yourself involved. Make sure that your top level leadership understand how important this is. Get yourself some airtime, company all hands, and things like that. And make sure that integrating phishing with the compliance communications is important. But going back a few slides, I think the quarterly or more training. If this is really, really important to protecting the organization, its resources and employees, you want to have a better chance at mind share by doing it more often, and making it. These simulations, this education is just part of the job at this point. The threats are so real and so constant, that it requires more than annual training, and you don't want to. I'm guilty of it as well. Like when I have a big chunk of trainings, sometimes you get in a pattern of just doing them to get through them, and not be on the list of non-compliant folks, then really taking it all in. And so having it happen more often is really effective. And then, the peer reinforcement is really big for me. I really like to spotlight employees who spot something. We just had somebody spot one yesterday. It was actually in her spam folder. She happened to see it. She happened to notice it was from a customer of ours, and it was an account takeover. And so we were able to not only give her a shout out, but also alert our teams internally. Hey, if you're getting emails from this company, there's a chance that it's somebody's has had their account taken over, and this isn't legitimate. So just be careful. And that always makes people feel good, and it helps everyone.
That's amazing. It's like you're activating all of these defense mechanisms when you've got, peer-led reinforcement. That's great. Parajat, how about you? Anything here resonate with you?
Yeah, I mean, again, a lot of the things are things we do here, but I wanted to highlight adaptive learning. So, because that's one of the ways we are getting to 100% completion faster. So we use adaptive learning. A couple of ways you could do like test outs or test downs. I like test downs because essentially you can tie each of your question to a particular lesson in the training, and then based on how people respond, you can either give them that lesson or not, right? And so it keeps the flexibility, but again, if you know all those areas, and especially if you've been with the company for a few years, right, you've seen the training, so this is a good way for you to test down from the training. And I get a few calls and emails, Lenny, from folks on your team saying, "Hey, this training was super quick. I got through it because, again, they have done it a few times and they know this." So it really helps people stay engaged and focus on the right thing. So I think that's one of the things we like to use a lot. And then we also try to connect it to our certifications, the ISO certifications that we hold, because training is a key component of that. And again, doing simulations and trainings shows as a higher score on that, and that's something we care about as a company. And to kind of get people's attention, we're also looking at tone from the top, right? So we try to leverage our CEO to send out a message to open our overall awareness training. So again, get that leadership participation. So again, all the things, but these two kind of really stood out for me.
Yeah, that's great. And your comments on adaptive learning just reminded me, like I've always thought that the holy grail is to train the workforce across a broader suite of risk areas while minimizing the seat time. And I just see so few programs out there that are actually paying attention to seat time. It's really easy to, as a compliance professional, to just stack more and more training into the regimen. But can you do that and actually reduce seat time so you're getting so much more return on investment, and you're giving the business back that seat time to use for production, right? And that's the way we like to measure the most the highest performing organizations. And I think if you're running these programs and you're not leveraging some of those adaptive learning and test out or test down features, you're leaving something out there, right? So, all right. Well, let's share some more numbers here. We're LRN. There's nothing we love more than sharing numbers and insights. So here's what we're seeing: 90% of phishing incidents do involve human error. Only this surprised me when I saw it. Only 29% of organizations measure behavioral improvement post-training. And then organizations with a continuous reinforcement motion reduce breach risk by 60%. So again, bringing out those micro learnings or smaller quarterly trainings, so important. And then feedback-driven simulations improve long-term retention 3x. So some really interesting insights. So here's some questions to ponder, and I'll leave these out there for you guys to share perspective. What makes behavioral change so difficult to achieve? How can feedback loops make training more effective? And what role do metrics play in reinforcing the right behavior? So I'll pause here for a second and get your insights. Andy, any thoughts on any of these critical questions?
Absolutely. What makes behavior difficult to achieve? We're talking about humans. They want things to be easy and convenient. And that a lot of times that revolves around trust, right? The more you can trust, the faster you can move, the less stress you have in making decisions. And Historically, remember You Got Mail from the AOL days? Like, it used to be exciting to get email, and like that, we still see a lot of that, you know, making an impact. Humans are stubborn too. They think they already know it all sometimes. So you're working against human nature to some extent to change the behavior. And that's what makes, changing behavior more difficult than just training folks, right? We want them to be autonomous and operate quickly and efficiently, but still making the right decisions about phishing and even, like, texts and voice messages they get, all those kind of things. Feedback loops making training more effective is kind of obvious. Like, if people don't know what they're getting right and getting wrong with this, they're not incentivized to change their behavior. And the metrics, with a one and done training, or even a couple times a year, you really don't know exactly what your staff are getting up to after they leave that training. And so metrics help drive your decision making on what you're going to prioritize. And with phishing simulation tools, it helps you tune those to get the most value out of it. And Hopefully people start trending away from that 18% open rate.
Yeah, as you were talking about, human behavior, you reminded me of that famous Charles Duhigg book about habits, right? It takes 21 days to form an effective and productive habit, and that requires reinforcement, right? It can't just be a one and done thing, and that's what we're up against, right? Parajat, anything you want to add on these critical questions? Oh,
Yeah,
we
let me unmute myself here. I mean, all of these are, important questions, but I think looking at, your metrics is key, right? So are you looking at input metrics, right? Which is, hey, how many people completed the training, right? Which is really like an input versus, the output metrics, right? So in this case, right, if your goal is to reduce, the number of phishing uh, attempts that made through, right? That's kind of your output metric, right? So thinking about, right, how can you get closer and closer to your ultimate goal and track that? I think that's one of the keys. And I think doing simulations really help, right? Because it kind of is right there in between, right? So you did a bunch of training, you did reinforcement, you did some messaging through email. So you have a nice input program, and you should definitely track that, right? But you should also track, like, what the outcome was, right? So the outcome is, hey, how many things got through? And then maybe, you're also looking at, hey, how is people's responses to simulation changing, and how is that changing over time, right? So again, the goal here is to have a feedback loop, but then have metrics, across the feedback loop, so that you can, track inputs, impacts, and then outputs.
Well put. And I think on this, next slide, we've beaten these points to the ground, but behavior-based training matters, real-time learning, just-in-time micro learning, decision making under pressure, and the need to track engagement and improvement over time with those metrics. So this is a great chance to launch our last and final poll question. So let's hear from the audience. How often does your organization reinforce phishing awareness beyond standard training cycles? Quarterly, annually, only during simulations, continuously, or perhaps not currently reinforcing? Let's give the audience a second here. And here we go. Again, interesting distribution curve. You know, about 1 in 5 are still stuck in that annual cycle. You know, a quarter of the group here doing quarterly, that's great. But hey, 27% of the audience is doing continuous training and reinforcement. That's got to give us a little bit of a positive outlook here. I think we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah,
So
that looks good to me. Yeah,
yeah,
you know, compared to a few years ago, that's probably way up.
we are. And what we're about to talk about is going to help in that endeavor, right? So I'm going to take a minute and you know, queue up Parajat to speak about LRN's Catalyst Phishing product here. And this just launched last month, so this is hot off the press. But Parajat, do you mind giving the audience just a quick overview of our phishing simulator, what it is, and how it works?
Absolutely. So yeah, we have you know, few slides, and you know, look, if you want to get a you know, real feel for it, I'm sure you know we can do some demos for you. But you know, this will give you like a quick view of what the product is. So what it is, it's really two things. It's a simulator and it's a learning response platform, right? So two things that come hand in hand. So and what's in the simulator, right? It's really that toolkit, you know, that we've been talking about, and it's a toolkit to simulate phishing attacks. So it comes with highly relevant templates based on current threats that the team has put together. All of these templates can be edited and customized by you. It's available in multiple languages, so depending upon, you know, the geography that you are covering. And it has this really nice setup which lets you randomize and even do things like, you know, set it up and then forget about it and let it run through. So you can really let the tool decide which simulations to run and then how often to run them, or you can control, you know, when you send these things out. So the simulator is super powerful from that perspective. And then the training platform just aligns very nicely to that. And essentially what it's trying to do is it's all behavior based, right? So the kinds of behavior that you're simulating, there are training assets that align right next to that. And the assets are like simple do's and don'ts. The assets are micro learnings. Assets are, you know, training courses from the LRN library, you know, that you can connect it. And so again, the tool is set up in such a way that you can pick the kinds of behaviors you're emphasizing on the simulation, and then you can assign, you know, training that comes right next to it. And that makes it, you know, very relevant and, you know, hopefully gets people to change behavior.
Great. And you know, I imagine, you know, we're looking to help both security teams as well as compliance and HR teams. Want to highlight just a couple of those benefits?
Yeah, I mean, look, here a lot of good things here, but you know, it fits into your existing workflow. So if you're already using Catalyst, people are used to taking the training. They can get on it pretty quickly. You're sending us your HRIS data. You don't have to send it again. You know, it has a lot of benefits, right, from the security side. It's very easy to use. So, you know, if you're like 1-person team or, you know, 2-person team of compliance and security, it's very easy to use bundles, and I'll show you what that looks like. The UI is very easy. And then we keep changing the threats, you know, essentially based on as they happen, right? So super easy to set it up and get it out there.
Yeah. So let's like give a quick glance at what it looks like.
Yeah. So you if you're again there's a library of simulations, but this is one of them. So you get an email saying your password has expired. You click on update password. It you enter your credential. And then depending upon how you have set it up, you might see this page, which is a do's and don't page. You might get a micro learning or you might get an actual training. And again, this is an example of a credential harvesting, right? And we track all of these things. So if you go to the next page, right, you will see like what the output might look like. But from the administrator standpoint, right, you can go in and select your phishing bundle, right, your phishing emails. And this is one of the really unique thing about Catalyst is that we have created these bundles. So a bundle is essentially three things. It's a email, it's a landing page, and it's a training asset. And they're all lined up nicely to reinforce the behavior that we are trying to simulate. And so you can pick these bundles and you can pick all of them or you can pick some of them, and then you can just turn it on and then it'll just randomly send out those simulations. And what that means is, if two people are sitting right next to each other, they won't see the same simulation, right? So it keeps the, some of the integrity of the simulation there. And you can use this tool as a simulator. So you can just send the simulation, or you can also send the training. And of course, if you do the both together, you have the ability, to kind of really assign training based on behaviors, right? It kind of connects the dots for you. And then the last thing you can see here is some of the, kind of end-to-end tracking, right? So you can track the simulation from delivery to open to the behaviors that happen to the training that got assigned and the scores that happen. So you'll get like a full 360 view of this simulation if you use this platform.
Well, what I love about it, and I've been hearing great feedback from beta users and the early adapters, but I think it really incorporates everything that we talked about here today. It's behavioral based. It's designed for a continual reinforcing motion, and it will give terrific data and insights and analytics on the back end. And again, it's focused on empowerment and provides the training in a safe learning environment. Well, I think that's a great overview of something out there for our audience that may not have their program exactly where they'd like it to be. And I think that's a great pivot to open up the floor here. So we saved some time for Q&A, and I'm gonna ask Emily Bowen, our administrator, to help us queue up some of these questions. And give me a second, and I see we've got a couple already in there. So we hold simulations. I'm going to read these from the submissions. We hold simulations at least quarterly and survey those that get caught to try to find insights into where the weaknesses are. The most commonly given contributor people state is that they were rushing through things and hadn't really paid attention. How much of a threat in general do you believe company culture in regard to workloads represents to an organization? Really thoughtful question. All right, Andy, Parajat, I'll let you guys take the first stab at answering that one.
Yeah, I'll start. It's a serious threat. And it's not something that we can easily work around or accommodate. And I think that's why simulated phishing, microlearning, moving to behavior-based training programs and education programs is all the more important, because I don't think that trend is reversing. We're hearing about more and more single or two-person teams like Parajat talked about, all across, and sometimes across company, not just in security. Maybe like you've only got one recruiter, or you've only got one or two people in accounts payable, or and things like situations like that. So they have huge workloads, and more than that, they have crowded inboxes, and they're just, sometimes they're just trying to get through their day, and they're just they're not gonna think too much about these things. And so if we can affect a behavioral change and cause them to think about these emails more like a security practitioner, a more paranoid individual would in general, and know how to spot these things, and expect they're going to be targeted, right? And just be more, I think, like you said, a little bit more cynical.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, with some advanced programs, we can make them able to do that at speed, and that's really, you know, where we want to get them to be. So it's a yeah, it's a big threat.
All right. I think we got time to hit most of these questions. So we had a really thoughtful question come in, presumably from the UK. So it says, the Information Commissioner's Office in the UK recently said that email was the threat landscape of 2022, with other media formats such as Microsoft Teams and I presume Slack being more common. What is your view on this? And so again, another great question for our panel. So Andy, and we'll start with you, Parajat. You can weigh in. I mean, yeah, beyond email, what are you seeing, and is that aligned with what you're seeing on the ground?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about multi-channel threats earlier, and a lot of these more targeted campaigns are going to try anything and everything they can to get the attention of somebody that they want to compromise. I will say that because of built-in controls on both Teams and Slack, having somebody external to your organization environment get in contact with you is a little more difficult. There's a few more steps involved, but it is certainly a threat. And then of course, SMS texting, voice messages, WhatsApp messages. I mean, anything and everything we're starting to see.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I would echo what Andy said. So I think SMS, you know, is one of the ways we are seeing it. And then of course, WhatsApp, but even like QR codes. I mean, I think these are relatively common that we have now, you know, names for this like quishing, smishing, wishing, right? I mean, the terminology is there because that's what's happening next to email. I think to the Team's comment, I think there have been situations where you might get like an email. So it still starts with email. The email is a Teams message or saying, hey, please click here and
Mhm.
I want to talk to you. And then, you know, the threat actors have set up like a fake Teams environment, right? And so when you click on it, you feel like you're on a real Teams call and you might be talking to like the CEO or the CFO, right? And then so it takes on. So it's still, you know, even though it's Teams, like ultimately it starts with an email where you click and say, urgent, someone wants to speak with you, and you get an
It's terrifying.
yeah.
I mean, these scenarios are terrifying.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
You know, we have just to add to that, we have we're in Slack, and we have a variety of team members who have you know, joint channels with some of our vendors and things like that. And that's where you see the supply chain element of this come in, because if somebody's able to a threat actor is able to compromise the account, the identity of a customer support person from one of your vendors, they can not only talk in those joint channels, but sometimes if you've authorized it, they can direct message you. And so that just opens up another channel. And there's a lot of sort of trust placed in that already, probably more so than email these days. People hear all the time about how unsafe email is, but I think they'd be a little less skeptical of, hey, I got this DM from someone I always talk to. Let me click this, open this attachment they sent me, or something like that.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that the practices that you would do to defend against email still apply, right? So pausing, being skeptical, thinking like a security professional, right? All of those things are transferable skills. So hopefully, you know, if employees get trained on one, you know, they can take it to other channels as well.
Yep.
all right. I think we got time for one last question, and so we got one that came in here. I'll direct this to Parajat. So Parajat, how long would it take me and my team to get a phishing program like what you shared off the ground? Can you enlighten us on how
Sure.
quickly we can go from current state today to a much more enhanced vigilance?
Yeah, I mean, again, it all depends on you know, the complexity of your requirements, your system, right? So that's all you know, I would caveat that, right? But you know, if you're already using the Catalyst, right, this thing is really easy to get up and running because you already have all the integration set up. We're already sharing data. You know, this thing can be, you know, off the ground in like, you know, 2 to 3 weeks, right? But if you're like starting new with us, you know, it probably will take a little bit longer to set up those integrations, you know. So you might be thinking like somewhere in the 4 to 6 week time frame, if you're starting fresh.
Right, great insights. And okay, team, I think we're going to have to leave it there. So I will leave this slide up for a second. We got a QR code if any of our participants are interested in getting a demo of LRN's Catalyst Phishing. I'll keep that up for a second, and then we'll just close out.
And that QR code's safe, right, Lenny?
That is safe. And not to worry, we've got 2 more webinars planned between now and the rest of the year. So the next one up, I hope you'll join me and my colleagues on November 13th, same time, 11 a.m. Eastern, for a great conversation about budgeting for impact, setting ethics and compliance priorities for 2026. We can talk about things like, where does the line item for a phishing simulator belong in a 2026 budget? Is it an IT item? Does it fold into an ethics and compliance program? Those are great questions, and we're going to be talking about them on November 13th. And then on December 11th, optimizing oversight trends in supplier and third-party governance. We talked a little bit about that today, but some great topics, and we hope you will tune in and join us. So again, I want to take a minute and thank my 2 colleagues, Andy Keller and Parajat Jahari. What a great conversation today. Really appreciate the insights that you guys brought.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Yes, same here.
All right. Thanks for joining, everyone. That's a wrap.